This journey was born and turned in southern Italy. To be precise, in the region of Cilento, it is a journey on the Via Silente, a nearly 600-kilometer route with 13,000 meters of elevation gain in an area yet to be discovered. But before we start, we must not forget to pay a visit to the info point of the way, where the nice girls who know every secret of the route provide valuable directions. And once I put the first stamp on the passport of the route, rock and roll can begin. But first, at the small bar of the info point, respecting my traditions, I drink a local beer and stick the beer cap on the fork for good luck. From the info point, you need to move to the real starting point, at the base of the 14th century castle, located in the highest part of the town of Castelnuovo Cilento. It is from here that, looking toward the horizon, one can get a first idea of what the route will give us in the coming days. Once on the bike, it takes a moment to realize what awaits us in the next 600 kilometers. A series of climbs and descents virtually uninterrupted all the way, where flat stretches will be as rare as snow in August. I didn't know it yet, but I will arrive at the end of the ride with completely worn brakes. The Via Silente, which started from the hills of Cilento dotted with microscopic towns, following some winding paths for about 40 kilometers, still follows the coastline before entering its interior. It must be because of the smell of saltiness combined with miles of endless ups and downs and a few thousand meters of elevation gain that we feel a certain pang. And in the absence of a restaurant, we fall back on a grocery store for a sandwich. And with the sandwich in the backpack, the best place to eat it is certainly in the town square of Castellabate, where, as a resident sympathetically reminds us, was filmed the movie
Benvenuti al Sud.
The roads are deserted and there is an almost total absence of traffic, and for us who live in the city, riding like this is a dream. From the castle of Rocca Cilento, one of the largest in Italy and perfectly restored, the view of the hills in the area is a breathtaking sight. The entire route runs within the Cilento National Park of the Vallo di Diano and Monti Alburni. The dominant color is obviously green because the territory is characterized by an extraordinary abundance of water, an added value for those who pedal over gradients, not always easy. We have turned quite a bit inside the national park, but from some high ground throwing the eye, sometimes it is still possible to see the western border of Cilento, the Tyrrhenian Sea. It may be by suggestion, but we also seem to smell it. It is worth mentioning that UNESCO has recognized the Cilento National Park as a World Biosphere Reserve. Here coexist almost completely intact ecosystems with a unique diversity of vegetation, combined with a great diversity of natural environments. An area that seems made specifically to be toured by bicycle. Make no mistake, here the climbs and descents begin in the morning before you even pedal. And be sure to pay attention to the narrow alleys that you may leave a few inches of skin on the walls. A characteristic of the road, roughness aside, is silent, as the name itself implies. Here you meander through hills with centuries-old olive trees, immense gorse bushes that contour the road and follow it for miles and miles until you get drunk with their scent. You cross fields manned by scarecrows, which I did not see when I was a child. And in the background, unfailingly silent hamlets. We will make a habit of seeing these villages, clinging to the hillsides like postcards hung with thumbtacks. Long rows of ferns accompany us along the road to Patina, from where we enter a fantastic tunnel of trees formed by an immense chestnut grove. It would be beautiful, but unfortunately the sky threatens to spill a few buckets of water on us. And in fact, after a few minutes, the sky turns from threats to facts and decides that one of the most challenging climbs of the route, long and with steep inclines, we have to climb it under a downpour that never stops for the whole climb, except for a few minutes, arrived at the end at Patina Astronomical Observatory, and then again a downpour until evening. Today's program includes a visit to the eerie village of Rossigno, assuming we can decipher the misleading signs. For miles we are surrounded by huge gorse bushes, which with their smell come to get you drunk, making you zig-zig. Little bad. Anyway, the road is all curves. The important thing is to get the first curve right, then the others go automatically. Updated at a local cafe, our collection of stamps for our passport, a signpost shows us the right way to the village of ancient Rosigno. The history of this village is at least curious. Built in this karst territory on very landslide terrain, the people were driven out by nature and abandoned their homes. Some emigrated to the Americas, some to Switzerland. Others, stubbornly, remained anchored to their homes and their roots until the arrival of an ordinance in 1907, which stipulated the evacuation of the village, and they left elsewhere, but always remaining in this area. For the last 22 years in these houses still lived, in total solitude, only one person. Disappeared him. In the ancient Rosigno, no one lives anymore. Here come, to visit what remains of the village, only a few curious like us. Leaving Rosigno to complete the day, we have to pedal for another 40 kilometers, and, as we have become accustomed to, we pedal immersed in seemingly unspoiled nature, with glimpses of breathtaking landscapes, passing through seemingly deserted villages. Accompanied once again by an endless and intoxicating line of flowering brooms. We just have to worry about arriving by evening at the village of Padula, in time to visit the Carthusian monastery of St. Lorenzo before it closes. The Charter House of San Lorenzo is the largest monastery in southern Italy. For centuries it belonged to the Carthusian order. Construction work on this immense structure began in 1306, but of the ancient buildings, little has come down to the present day, because the Carthusian monastery saw a long series of major remodeling works over the centuries that ended around the 18th century, which coincides with the period of greatest splendor for the Carthusian. The Carthusians left Padula and the Carthusian monastery in 1807, during the French decade of the Kingdom of Naples, when they were deprived of their possessions. Their property was confiscated, the order was suppressed, and the Carthusian monastery was turned into barracks. After Napoleonic, the monks returned for a short time. With the unification of Italy, the Charter House became a museum, and finally, during the two wars, it was used as a prison and concentration camp. The Great Cloister, with its 15,000 square meters of floor space, is one of the largest in Europe. One can spend hours there, wandering through finely decorated rooms and cloisters. Not to be missed is the church dedicated to St. Lawrence, with its vault decorated with precious 18th century gilded stucco. The kitchen was probably also a repurposed refectory, and on the walls one can still see frescoes blurred by time and fumes from the kitchen. Today it is again, and finally, back to being a museum. And since 1998 it has been on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Leaving the Carthusian monastery, the road bends sharply southward toward the Tyrrhenian Sea. But along the way we still come across a few welcome surprises. In fact, past the village of Casaletto Spartano, still following the precise directions of Via Silente, we head a few kilometers from the village, where there is the most famous waterfall in Cilento. The water of the Busentino River flows over a plant called maidenhair, giving it this striking appearance. You could also go swimming, but be warned, the water is frozen. After about 70 kilometers and 1,000 meters of elevation gain, the road continues to take us southward, and a strong smell of sea and saltiness comes to fill our nostrils. The descent made in hairpin bends is the unmistakable one that leads to Marina di Camerota. But almost immediately after a few kilometers, while following the direction of the coast and staying a little further inland by a few hundred meters, we go back up again. And If there was little road traffic along the park roads, here it is even nil. Interrupted only by a series of roadworks that completely block transit, excluding bicycles, by the way. The last major difficulty is found after passing the small town of Novi Vela, where a detour leads to a decidedly long, challenging and dead-end climb. It is the ascent of Mount Gelbison, the highest point of the route, at 1,852 meters above sea level, where there is the shrine of the Madonna of Monte Sacro, whose origins are lost in the mists of time. The first evidence of its existence dates back more than 10 centuries. Descended from the mountain, tonight that can be enough for us. Time to look for food and a bed. I have to say, I'm a little sorry to face these last kilometers, and also these last climbs, because the Cilento with us was generous and made us enjoy, and also fed us. For figs it was really a little early, but for everything else a real wonder. Between lemons, peaches, cherries, apricots, plums and grapes, every day was a real binge. Which for us, accustomed to those insignificant flavors of supermarkets, was a return to the taste of real fruit, something that has been forgotten in the city now. We still need a moment of patience, because to worthily conclude this Italian story, a few things are missing. Our last curiosity is the passage through the village of Piano Vetrale, with murals painted on the facades of houses and representing moments of daily life, fairy tale characters, zodiac signs and folk traditions. And as we travel these last kilometers that magically bring us back to the starting point, let me thank the true souls of this extraordinary route, those of Simona Ridolfi, Simona Pergola and Ilda Migliaccio. Without their suggestions and help, the journey would not have been so good.